Corey here from Solenoid Studio, and in this video I'm going to be showing you a tip on how to work with the Symphony Series string ensemble from Audio Bro and Native Instruments. Now, any of you who have picked up this library because you've heard the demos and watched the videos will notice that it's a nice sounding library. It's got a nice classical sound. It's all recorded in situ, so you don't have to pan it yourself. And it's very, very flexible. You've got divisi sections for every string section. You've got 4 divises for violins, and then you've got 2 divises for viola, cello, and basses. And that's great. Another great thing is that everything's kept in one patch. You've got your legato, your sordino, your pizzicato, staccato, all in one patch, which I think is great. Personally, I hate having to switch out legato patches and staccato patches. It really annoys me. So this works really well. But one thing you might have noticed is that the sound of the strings themselves, they lack a bit of presence. They lack a bit of punch. They sound a bit thinned down, and they kind of sit back in the mix. And when you try to put them in a mix, especially with the brass and the woodwinds, because the brass and the woodwinds were, recorded in a church and they're a lot more epic and large sounding, the studio recorded strings, they sit back. They don't really come to the forefront. And that's a bit of a problem when you get the library and you're kind of like, oh, what am I going to do now, because the library doesn't cost peanuts, it is a fairly high-priced library. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get the best out of these. I'm going to dive straight into it. Now, here's a little trick that I use. You don't have to do it exactly the same way I do it. You can just use one patch per, basses, cello, violas, violins, but I'm going to use 2 patches here. Now, watch what I do. I'm going to pull in basses, and I'm going to pull in another patch of basses. Now, I'm going to do this with every single section except for the violas. I'll show you why later. I'm going to pull in 2 patches of the basses, and I do the same with the cellos, the cello, and I do the same with the violins. Now let's just focus on the basses. I've pulled in the 2 bass patches. Now, why have I pulled in 2 patches? Well, the reason is because I'm going to go to the divisi page here and set the first patch to divisi A, and set the second patch to divisi B. Now, this allows me to separate each of the patches into their smaller sections, which creates more definition. It's less muddy. With the violins, I do this with the first violins. I basically divide the first violins into divisi A and B. You can do it with the second violins, or you can do it with just the first and second violins, but we'll focus on just the divisi now, the small sections. So I've got patch 1 and patch 2 set to A and B. Now let's go back to the main page. One thing that I had a problem with this library is that the portamentos sound great, but the actual quick legato transitions, they're not slurred or fingered transitions. They're bowed transitions. So when you try to get some movement going on, there is none. It's basically bow change, and it sounds a little static. It can make you feel as though, did they actually record legato? Well, yeah, they did, but they recorded the bowed legato, and the bowed legato is more of a stated legato. It's more for quick and stated transitions. It doesn't cover the movement or emotional transitions you'd get from slurred or fingered legato, which, I was kind of disappointed in, but hey, you can't get everything. So what I do is I just completely get rid of that legato. For each patch, I drag the slider all the way up here so that we're only in portamento mode. Now, for the basses, I haven't got it set all the way up, but for the rest of the patches, cello, violas, violins, I set the speed all the way up so that when you move from note to note, it doesn't trigger the entire portamento. It triggers your portamento at a faster rate, twice the speed, I think, and it sounds more like a slurred legato, and it doesn't sound like a full portamento. And you can easily play fast passages with it, and it actually has a blur when you play fast passages. It's got that kind of sweet blur to it that makes it sound more realistic. So do this, because this will give the strings a lot more movement, and it's a really good way to move between notes in a more smoother way. Now, if you want to activate portamento, because obviously this basically means you can't use slow portamento anymore, but if you want to use slow portamento, you can basically MIDI learn a CC to the speed knob. And when you want to do a specific slow portamento note, you basically learn your MIDI CC, pull the CC down, so you pull the speed down and you'll get a nice slow portamento, and then you pull the speed back up. So that is one way to get around that. Another thing is the darkness of the strings. They're very dark. So what I do is, instead of fooling around with the snap or slam function, the slam function, with the spiccato and staccatos and all that, we've got a slam function which adds more transient attack to the notes. You don't even need to touch that if you just pull the brightness up here to 125%. That'll make the strings sit a bit closer. It'll pull them forward and it'll give them that attack. Now with the mixer, I use the close mics because it gives more punch. You can use the mid ones if you want to, or the stereo, but I found the close mics work particularly well for this. Now, what do we got? We got two patches, Divisi A, Divisi B. Both of them, the portamento is only activated and the speed is pulled up, and you've got the brightness up. Now, here's where it gets a bit interesting. The strings themselves now will sound a bit more thick, but this is why I pull in two patches. And I don't do this with the violas. I prefer the violas to sit in the middle. Now, if you haven't worked with Contact Engine before, just bear with me. You go to the instrument settings in here, clicking this little spanner, and we go to the group editor. Make sure that you've selected edit all groups, so it will edit all of the sounds in the library. Okay. Now we'll go down to insert effects. This will allow you to insert an effect to all of those groups. Now we'll go down to the inverter. Now you have the inverter, and I've got it on the patch A. Okay, the first patch. Now you only want to use this for the first patch, not for the second patch, or you can use it for the second patch and not for the first patch. But either way, you only want to use it on one patch, and I'll show you why in a minute. Now, these are basses Divisi A. Now, you're going to click left and right swap. This is going to swap the stereo field so that the basses are now sitting on the left instead of the right. And because you've swapped it, remember that these are the left basses. The way I think of it is writing. I stick patch 1, patch 2, left, right. So we're going to swap the stereo field for these first basses. And you don't have to do this, what I'm doing now, but I like to do it because it helps with more punch. Because we've swapped the first patch over to the left, we're going to drag this pan all the way to the left, okay? Now we're going to go to the second patch. We won't touch that one. We've only flipped the stereo field for the ones that were on the right as well, so that you've got left basses. Now these basses are already on the right because they were recorded that way. We're going to grab this panner and pan it all the way to the right. Now you've got a very wide bass sound. The reason I choose this is because when it's wide and it's in both the left and right hard pan and they're both different samples, you get a very lush, powerful and present sound from both the thinned and defined smaller ensembles. Okay? This is how I get a nice punchy sound, and I'll give you a listen to the legato and the staccatos in a minute, but just bear with me and do that to your patches following along. Now we do this the same way with the cello. We pull in the two patches. For patch 1, we take the cello and we swap the stereo field and pull that all the way to the left, and then pull the normal one all the way to the right. And we do everything here, we set the portamento and the divisi size. With the violas, I don't do that. I just pull in a divisi A and play that as is, because the divisi A is more towards in the middle, and I like the violas to sit in the middle to give more definition. For the violins, we pull two patches of violins up. I get the violins 1, divisi A and divisi B. I do the same thing with these and go into the divisi A, swap the stereo field once again. And because the violins are on the left, instead of swapping the stereo field and pulling it to the left, I'll swap the stereo field, pull the first patch to the right so that the violins are to the right, and then get the original patch and move that to the left. Okay, remember that, because the violins are naturally recorded on the left. It looks this way because the basses are on the right. So try to bear with me with this. And when you've done that, all of your patches, excluding the violas, which will be straight down the middle, they'll have a wide stereo panning, and it might seem a bit extreme to you, but when you've got the two smaller divises working in tandem on hard left and hard right, they have almost a singular stereo sound, but you get little bits of definition out of the left and the right. Same happens for the violins, the cello, and the basses, and you get presence and definition. Now, what does this do? Well, I'll show you. I'll play you back a legato, a very short legato piece, and then I'll play you back a very short staccato piece, and let you listen to how this setup affects the strings and how it can give them more punch, more presence, more richness, more width. So have a listen. So, forgive me for talking for so long, but I had to get through the basic process because it can be a little tricky if you don't know exactly what's going on. But that's the sound that I wanted to get, and now I've got it. You don't have to do what I've done with the panning. Obviously, you can just completely cut that whole section out if you want only, if you don't want it to be, wide stereo panned, if you want it in specific classical positioning. You can just take my advice and do the other thing where we just pull the legato bar up and only use fast portamentos and up the brightness, and you can use smaller defined sections as well. But yeah, that's how I get a more punchy sound out of them, and they sit better in the mix when I'm, putting the strings in other pieces. And obviously, if doing this obviously negates the portamento as a whole, because you're speeding up the portamento and using them as slur transitions. So you won't be able to use slow portamento, but you still can. You can get around with it. You can take the speed knob here, for example, MIDI CC learn that to a fader or something. And when you learn it, basically you pull the fader up so that the speed's all the way up. And when you want a slower portamento transition, you just pull that fader down and you get a much slower transition. So this will actually give you the control that you need over how fast you want the portamento to be. So you can basically turn it into a full portamento or slide it up and turn it into more of a slur, and anywhere in between. So this video's gone on a bit long, but either way, that's how I work with the Symphony Series strings. I hope that helped you out and helped you to sort of get the best out of the library, because as I said, the library isn't really, it's not exactly cheap, and you may want to use it with the rest of the Symphony Series ensemble, and this is the way to get it punchy, to get it out there and to get it packing its weight. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you later with hopefully another library. Check you later.